Death, where is thy sting? The curse of sin is broken. The empty tomb stands open. Come and see. He's alive, alive, alive. Hallelujah. Alive. Praise and glory to the Lamb. Alive, alive, alive. Hallelujah. Alive forever. Amen. Let my heart sing out. Won't hurt me now, because he has redeemed me. No grave will ever keep me from my King. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. I'm alive. Alive, hallelujah, alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. Worthy is the Lamb. Worthy of the praise, worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty. Sing it worthy. Let the people sing. He's worthy, he's worthy. Oh, Jesus is worthy. Come on, give him praise, 'cause he is worthy. He's worthy, worthy. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Come on, celebrate. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the He's alive, he's alive. He is alive. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive. He's alive.
Here. Oh, there we go. That's what I was doing wrong. Hey, everybody. I think you can hear me. Hold on. Hello? Hello? Okay, there I am. All right. I'll see if I can hear me on this, and then we will know for sure. The big finish is... Oh, yep, I'm on. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Travelogue, Israel Travelogue number 10. I'm playing around with this new program, and so, I don't know, Judy said it looked weird. She's probably right. I'm okay with that. The thing that I like about it is that I can create this kind of text, this picture-in-picture, without it taking the whole thing. It just takes up whatever space I take up. If I was doing a different kind of a thing, it would be taking up, the bottom quarter of the screen. And so I wanted to leave most of the screen open for pictures and stuff. So tonight we are going to. Oh, I should get rid of that. Oh, wrong. I've got two different. Hey, there we go. Two different computer systems that I'm trying to use at the same time, and so I reach for the wrong mouse. Anyway, if you have questions, please let me know. They will pop up on my feed, and I'll be able to see them. One of the things that I miss the most about this and having everybody here, by everybody I mean my Wednesday night Bible study people, is that there are no questions. Nobody raises their hand and says, "Hey, what's the deal with that big old massive castle over there on your?" Would it be on my right? I guess it's on my right. I'm on your left. Anyway, so if you have questions, please pop in and ask your questions. I think it would work either if you are doing this on Facebook or on YouTube. So we'll see how it goes. Today, in episode 10, we go to the Golan Heights and to a Druze village, and we'll talk about what the Druze people are, D-R-U-Z-E, depending on, it's the Middle East. It's spelled in many different ways in English. But we're going to go to a Druze village, and we are going to eat at a Druze restaurant. And then from there, we go to the Golan Heights and kind of an overlook of Syria, kind of the very northern edge of Israel. And then we head down back to the Sea of Galilee, where we will spend some time in what is now called Gergesa, but which used to be called the Gadarenes. And it's the place where Jesus met a guy named Legion, and a bunch of pigs ran off into the Sea of Galilee. Spoiler alert. And then we will go from there. That's the end of that day. I think that was the end of day 5. Day 5, that evening, we had a big bonfire next to the Sea of Galilee, which was really cool. Michael Card played some songs, and it was really neat. And then the next day, we got up and we went to Mount Arbel and then Nazareth. And so that's I don't know how much we'll make it through tonight, but we will see. So last time, I took a break from going in chronological order when we got to Holy Week, and I talked about kind of the stuff surrounding the cross and Gethsemane and all of that. And so as far as the chronological time frame for being in Israel, I hadn't yet gone to Jerusalem for all of that. And so the last time that we were kind of going chronologically through this whole thing, we left off here at, it's called Nimrod's Castle. And if you didn't get to see it, you can go back on the Facebook page. There is an entire video playlist that's just these Israel travelogues, starting day 1 and going through, like I said, here we are. This is day 5, I believe, of our time in Israel. But this is where we left off. This mountain, this fortress, which isn't even, it doesn't really have anything to do with Jesus. It is a Crusader-era castle built by a Muslim, actually, to protect against the Crusaders that were coming. And when the Crusaders took that castle, it became one of their castles, and then it was taken later by the Muslims, and then it was taken again by another set of crusaders, and then finally the Ottoman Empire. And so, but it has nothing to do with Jesus, other than it happens to be built upon what our guide believed to be the Mount of Transfiguration. And so we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, Jesus and his time up here at the Mount of Transfiguration. And as we left that place, there's the arrow windows so that they could shoot arrows down at people that were coming up, but people couldn't shoot at them. So yeah, up there in that general vicinity is the area that at least our guide thinks was the Mount of Transfiguration. These are just some old olive trees, and they were everywhere, but every time I saw an old bunch of olive trees, I would take a picture, and you can see the castle up there in that area. It's like they're everywhere in Israel. So we left Nimrod's fortress, and we went to Magdal Shams, which is this Druze restaurant village that I was telling you about. There we are. We're driving away from Nimrod's castle, and I got some pictures sort of what it looks like from afar. And that's like at the base. If you can't see the castle up there, but if you were an invading army and you were going to attack the castle, that's what you'd be looking at. And I'm like, I can't even imagine attacking that castle. But this is on the way to the Druze village. If you went down that path, you would end up in Syria. They said, you really don't want to do that unless you're Syrian. Yeah, the other side, so we're driving along, there's this fence. That's Syria on the other side. And here we come to this Druze village, Magdal Shams. It is in the furthest northern reaches of what is now Israel, and it's just a kind of a typical little Middle Eastern town. And you can see they have these weird like monuments. It's like there's a Crusader era knight. There's a guy on the back of a horse with a rifle. On the other side, there's another weird thing that it's like, I don't even know what the heck that is, but that's what's on the other side of it. But just to give you an idea of these Druze people, the Druze are a religious group that is in the northern part of Israel, southern part of Lebanon and Syria, and a little bit in Egypt. There's maybe 1 million of them, and they trace their heritage back to this guy named Jethro. Jethro, the priest of Midian, who was Moses' father-in-law. Remember, Moses leaves Egypt to get away from murder, and he ends up in Midian, and he saves a group of ladies that are trying to water their flocks from some ruffians, I guess he'd say, and he ends up marrying one of them, Zipporah. But Zipporah's father was named Jethro, and he is the priest of Midian, is all that they really say about him, which is very strange. It's like, what is the priest of Midian, and what do they believe? What did the priests of Midian believe? And we don't really get to find out that much. We do know that Jethro was a believer in Yahweh, and he becomes an advisor to Moses. But the Druze, they trace their lineage back to this guy. And they are this really strange combination of that part, the ancient Near East, of all of the different kind of religions that are there. So they are like, they're part Jewish, they are part Muslim, they are part sort of this weird transcendentalism from up in like Persia and Babylon. They believe in reincarnation, and they believe, it's this really weird group of people, and very nice people, and they were instrumental in Israel's independence, but they are Zippo lighters named after Zipporah. It's Zipporah with like a f, not a p. So anyways, no, they were not named after Zipporah, but that's a good one. So the Druze, well, I'll just kind of show you. So this is the restaurant that we ate at, the Al Sultan restaurant. And they kept telling us that this would be our favorite meal of the trip. I mean, they were playing it up. And so we all had high expectations. And there's my son, Jonathan. He's standing there showing, I don't know what he's showing to her, but he's showing something to her. We got inside. We all sat down at these long tables. There I am down there at the end. There's Jonathan across from me. Some of our friends. This is one of the ladies that she was the assistant photographer. Her husband was the photographer. There's Michael Card over here. So, yeah, we got to sit down to eat. And it was sort of traditional, Middle Eastern kind of fare. Michael Card put ketchup on everything. And so if you ever have a picture of him in a restaurant, he's holding up the ketchup because they gave him a really hard time about how much ketchup he ate. Which it makes sense because every meal that you would go to in Israel, they served French fries. It was very weird. I had never seen anything like it. So this meal here that is made up of all these salads, there's some weird kind of corn salad. There's this stuff that's almost like pickles, and there's relish, and then they had hummus and baba ganoush and this weird garlicky spread and French fries. It was just really weird. That is one of the napkins in the place. I assume it says Al Sultan. I don't speak or read Druze, but I assume that's what it is. And so, yeah, there's our pita bread with the hummus and all that stuff. Colorful straws. Jonathan wanted me to make sure I got a picture of that. And you can see it's kind of like a Subway for these pita sandwiches. And people would go in and they'd stand in line and they'd ask for these different things and they'd just kind of pile it in. It was really pretty impressive to watch. Not us. We went and sat down. They had us all ready to go. But, yeah, for most of us, that's what we did. There were not any language barriers. Not really. Everybody spoke English. And if they didn't, we had our guides either spoke Hebrew, Arabic, the Druze people, I don't know what, they also spoke Hebrew, so it was they spoke English, so it wasn't a problem. So I got a picture of the lady that worked there because she is wearing traditional Druze garb. And I couldn't get a picture of her from the front. And I was trying really hard without being too annoyingly touristy. But I did get a picture. I found this on internet, on Facebook. It's their restaurant. That's the lady that you saw walking away. And this is what it looks like. That traditional Druze costume looks like from the front. So when we left Magdal Shams, we headed down to the Golan Volcanic Park, which is down here. It took us about a half an hour. And as we drove, the signs basically say, Syria is this way, and do not go down there unless you are Syrian. And if, really, our guide told us, and if you were Syrian and you were over here and you got caught, you were going to be in a world of trouble. So, yeah, you just wanted to make sure if you were driving up there that you didn't take a wrong turn. This is standing at the Golan Volcanic Observatory. And the real reason they stopped here is because it's just, you're in the Golan Heights, which Israel occupied, I guess you would say, during the Six-Day War, and then a little bit more even during the Yom Kippur War. But they do not consider it to be Israel proper. It is part of, I don't even know what they call it. Well, it's part of the Golan Heights. And they are going to hold it until somebody takes it away from them or until there is a peace treaty. And depending on who you talk to, there are different bad guys in this whole peace treaty process. And I think everybody's got a little bit of blame to share and to shoulder. But it was really interesting because it's like you're standing there and you're looking at all of this and it's pointing out, every point that it points out is in Syria. So that road there takes you to Syria, which is why you've got these weird kind of humps and you'd have to kind of slalom through there. So people do drive through there. The Druze could drive through there because they are accepted on both sides. But if you were Jewish, Probably if you were American or if you were Syrian coming the other way, you would be probably detained. But so there's Syria. You're looking out at Syria from the top of the Golan Heights. I don't remember what the name of that lake was, but it was just kind of interesting. I turned around and looked up. Right behind us was this big mountain that went up, and at the top of that mountain were these weird buildings, right? So I just grabbed my, turned my camera around and, took a couple of snapshots real quick just to kind of get an idea. I put my phone away. I kind of stood there and turned around and looked at other stuff. All of a sudden, this one lady takes a picture of this same spot, and our guide came unglued. He was like, "You want to get arrested?" It's like, I guess that's Israeli Defense Forces up there, which I'm like, why is my picture going to have anything to do with, it's like, what picture am I going to take that the people that are just right over there can't get a better picture of? But anyways, he flipped out. We asked him before he flipped out. We were like, "Hey, what's that up there?" And he was like, "Don't ask questions about what's up there." And I was like, I wonder why. I just taken pictures, I didn't seem like anything weird to me. But yeah, that lady, she got chewed out for doing it. And she was not happy. But of course, neither was he. So we left the Golan Volcanic Observatory, and we are heading south now back towards the Sea of Galilee. We're still up on the Golan Heights, and I just take some pictures outside the window of the bus just to give you an idea. These are tanks. I don't know if you can tell from your picture, but this is like, there were some places where they were driving around and doing maneuvers and stuff. So I assume it's that they're all up there, that they're for training purposes, but also for defense purposes. He didn't yell at us for taking pictures of the tanks on the side of the road, but it may be because he didn't know that we were taking pictures of all these tanks. I mean, just all of this stuff is just massive, massive military installation, and you would just keep seeing tank after tank after tank after tank. This guy was hauling tanks right here. They're unloading tanks, and now this is just a few. I guess at this point it'd be a few weeks after that whole dust up with Iran, and when the whole thing happened, I was wondering if our trip was going to fall through, if it was going to just flare up in Israel and we wouldn't be able to go. And so after it kind of calmed down a little bit, I asked a friend of mine who works in military intelligence, and I was like, "So would you go over there?" And maybe the better question would be like, "Would you send your son over there right now to Israel?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He was like, "I have a feeling that you're going to be safer now than you would have been 3 weeks ago, before all of this happened, because everybody's on pins and needles. Everybody's on best behavior. And we never saw one issue. But when we saw those tanks, it did make us wonder." So we got down to Gergesa. This is the place that they think, probably, Jesus met that guy named Legion, the one that was filled with demons, and where the Gentiles were watching their pigs. It's about the only place on this side of the lake where you have a place where the pigs could fall off of a cliff into the Sea of Galilee. And so, just to kind of give you an idea, they have all these markers, all these monuments celebrating it. None of them were in English. I don't know what they were thinking. They just were so rude about not translating them into English. It was really interesting. Most of those places, they would have Hebrew, Aramaic, or Arabic, and then English underneath. And so, but this one, they didn't. And so if you were just driving through, you'd have no idea this is the spot. But the story goes that Jesus is in Capernaum, which from where they are there, it would be this direction, sort of up here. not straight across the lake, but sort of like if you were looking at the lake, you got that direction. That's well, I looked the wrong way. There we go. That direction. It's flipped around. It's confusing me. But Jesus says to his friends, let's go to the other side of the lake. Now, they didn't like going to the other side of the lake because the other side of the lake is where it wasn't the Jewish side of the lake, right? Up on the north, that's the Jewish section of the lake. A little bit to some extent the western side of the Sea of Galilee. But this eastern side of the Sea of Galilee is part of what's called the Decapolis. And the Decapolis literally means 10 cities. Decapolis, right? So 10 cities. And what it is, the Romans, by the time you get to this point in time in their history, the Romans, what they'll do with their legions when they are ready to retire their legions is if they just like send them home, then they get into trouble, right? But what they found out was if you gave them land and you settled them in a city and gave them land to farm and to to make money for themselves, then what you had is a new Roman settlement in these different places all over the Roman Empire where if trouble ever kind of flared up, then these old legionaries would just sort of like get their armor out of the closet, get themselves together, and they'd go off and put down whatever, problem had flared up. And so you have 10 of these cities right there, kind of right along the Sea of Galilee and to the south of it a little bit. On the next day, the day that we go to Mount Arbel and Nazareth, at the end of that day, we go to a place called Bet Shaun. And Bet Shaun is one of the most well-preserved Roman cities. It's one of the Decapolis cities. It's one of the most well-preserved in the world. And the reason it was so well-preserved is there was an earthquake and everything just kind of fell down. And the city was already to a point where they were just kind of like, well, you know what? There's no point rebuilding. Let's just go home. Let's go somewhere else. And so it just kind of piled up and when it was excavated. So we'll probably see pictures of that next week. But that's what's going on over here on the other side of the lake. And so when Jesus says, I want to go over there, that's what his disciples are afraid of. They're afraid of going where, the boogeymen are. They're Roman legionaries, right? They're terrifying. They are the toughest, meanest people on the face of the planet as far as a Jew is concerned. But Jesus, when Jesus says, let's go, they just say, okay, let's go. And so off they go. And if you know the story, while they're on their way to the other side of the lake, a giant storm comes up and threatens to capsize them. And Mark calls it basically a demonic storm. That this is not a typical storm on the Sea of Galilee. This is something Satan's trying to destroy Jesus and all of his followers in one swift blow. But Jesus gets up and says, shh, and the wind settles down. And his friends, Peter and Andrew and James and John and all the other apostles, they're even more afraid now, right? But they get to the other side of the lake and they beach their ship, their boat, right by a graveyard. And they had to be thinking, oh, this can't get any worse. Except that then this guy named Legion, who's filled with all these demons, comes running out from one of the tombs and just is like running at them, like he's going to attack them and kill them. But Jesus stops him. And the guy falls down at Jesus' feet. And he says, let's see, do I have a place here? That's kind of the view from behind. There's our intrepid guide, David, and he's teaching us all about Jesus. Okay, so the guy falls at Jesus' feet. Jesus demanded, what is your name? And he replied, my name is Legion, because there are many of us inside this man. Then the evil spirits begged him again and again not to send them to some distant place. Now, when it's not in this translation, but in another translation they say, don't send us into the abyss. That's what they say. Now, I don't know what you think of when they say that. Growing up in, it was 20th century America at that time, I thought the abyss was just another word for hell. And kind of, but the Jews and the people around that part of the lake, they called the Sea of Galilee the abyss, because they believed that the souls of the evil dead went into the bottom of that lake, which is one of the reasons why the disciples did not like going out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, right? Even though you're never far from shore, they just didn't like it because they believed there were ghosts down there. That's why in another story where Jesus is walking on the water, they are just sure at first that he is a ghost because there's this thing walking on the abyss. And so they're just sure. And Jesus is like, no, it's me. I'm no ghost. It's me. And he gets into the boat with them. And so the demon begs Jesus, don't send us into the abyss, talking about the Sea of Galilee. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby. Send us into those pigs, the spirits begged. Let us enter them. So Jesus gave them permission. The evil spirits came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. And so, in other words, they said, don't send us into the abyss. Jesus sends them into the pigs, and then the pigs go into the abyss. And so I don't know if Jesus was like, you see that? They want to go. I don't know. I don't know if his disciples are unfreaked out enough at this point to find the humor in this whole thing. But the local farmers, they do not find the humor, and they demand that Jesus and his friends leave and just basically get on out of Dodge. And so Jesus and his friends get in the boat and go back to the proper side of the lake in Capernaum. But this is just, it's like this is from that same spot. I think I've got pictures. There I am saying, can you believe I'm standing where a herd of pigs once stood? It's just absolutely one of the most gorgeous places on earth. Every time I just kind of see a picture of the Sea of Galilee now, my heart just kind of slows down, and I just feel calm. When I how they say, visualize someplace peaceful or something peaceful. When I'm trying to do that now, this is where I'm visualizing the shores of the Sea of Galilee. And that's the cliff, right? They would just oink, oink, psh. Which that reminds me of a funny story. Had a friend from Sweden. He was an exchange student, and he was staying with us. Well, not with me, but with a family from our school. And so we went through our senior year together. And his name was Lasse, Lasse, and he could speak pretty good English, but it was very, very heavily accented with Swedish. And my friend had this old 65 Chevrolet Impala, and the headliner was falling off, and so he had found diaper pins and had pinned the headliner up all across the top. And the diaper pins had little piggies on them. And so we're driving down the road one day, and Lasse goes, "Noof, noof." And, we kind of look at him. He's sitting in the back seat. We're like, whatever. He goes, "Noof, noof." And he keeps laughing, and we look back. He goes, "Noof, noof." And we're like, "What, Lasse, what?" And he goes, "Noof, noof, the pigs, noof, noof." And we're like, "What is that?" He goes, "That's what pigs say. The pig says noof, noof." We were like, "Not in America, buddy. In America, the pigs say oink, oink." And he had never heard oink, which it's funny because it's like, really, noof, noof does sound a lot more like what pigs say more often than oink, oink. Oink, oink is more like should be like the exclamatory pig. I don't know. But yeah, that's where the pigs fell off. I'm sure they oinked and didn't just noof as they fell off of the cliff and down into the abyss. Gosh, that was a pretty spot. Windy. It was really windy. And threatening to knock us down. That's looking back up to the north towards where Jesus would have spent, the Capernaum, up in that part of the world. Oh, we got a video. And the video is done. So yeah, just to give you an idea of where we were, As we left and went back to the Ein Gev resort, there are these date palms everywhere. The Israelis use every inch that they can of Israel for farming. That wasn't something that the Arabs really did much of, but the Jews, I mean, going back to the most ancient of times, it's like even when the Jews were living in the land and it was controlled by the Arabs, the Jews were almost always farmers in Israel. When you think about Jews being like bankers and shopkeepers and stuff like that, that's because when they lived in Europe during the Middle Ages, they were not allowed to do anything else. And so they adapted, and that's what they did. Here we are back at Ein Gev Resort. We got there every night for sunset, and I'm so glad we did. Like I said, this is just what I picture. I think one of these is going to be a video. There we go. Just to give you an idea. I don't think I'm actually singing during this one, which was strange. I realized only after I got back and started playing these things for you guys. I'm usually singing when I'm walking around filming. I think I was singing the song Psalm 50 something. Oh Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name above the earth, as Keith Green's song. And it just, every time I would go to the Sea of Galilee, that's what would run through my brain. And I was blown away. We were there for 4 nights. I think 3 out of the 4, I was all alone on the beach at sunset. It floored me. Is this the video that yeah.
I can't believe it. I have the beach all to myself at sunset on the Sea of Galilee. Oh, birds. Birds are everywhere in Galilee. It's beyond explanation.
Yeah, I'll just show you this. All those rocks. The Sea of Galilee, at this point in time, in January, late January of 2020, it is like something like 10 feet higher than it had been in as long as anybody could remember. I think I have a picture back here. Yeah. So where you see all of this grass and stuff, back, let's say I think it started in October, that was dry. And all along here was dry. You can see sand right there, kind of. And so when we got there, the sand, it used to be a sandy beach, but now it's rocks up here. And so it was rocks, and then the sand started down here. But every night I would go down and I'd just collect rocks, and I would bring back pockets full. And Jonathan I'd come back into our room, and I'd set them out on the table, and Jonathan would say, "More rocks, Dad? You need to stop." And I'm like, "No, they told me I could bring as many rocks home with me as I want." You know, I checked with the Israeli, the travel people, and they were like, "Yeah, they want you to take back rocks. Share them with your friends." And so if you're like, "Gosh, I want a Sea of Galilee rock, Pastor Ed," I will give you a Sea of Galilee rock. I brought back, well, I'll just keep that between myself and me, exactly how many I brought back, but let's just say pounds of them. And so it's like, anyway, absolutely beautiful. There's the picture of all those birds. There were these big, I don't even know what they were, and they would just kind of gather, you can't really even see. There's got to be 50 of them out here. Probably most of them under the skyline, and they were just sort of circling. And I don't know if there was an air current right there or what, but it's like I would just sit there. I talked about this day 3. I think day 3 is the day we got to the Sea of Galilee. We spent the first 2 days in Jerusalem. You couldn't leave your hotel room at night in Jerusalem. And it was dirty and crowded and loud and busy. And did I say dirty? I think I said dirty. I mean, it was nuts. Jerusalem, it's like when Jesus, I understand a little bit better now how Jesus, on the day that he's coming down from the Mount of Olives on Palm Sunday, and he stops and says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who killed the prophets and stoned those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks, but you would not let me. I understand that so much better now. Jerusalem is crazy, and I had no idea how, tense I was until we got here on that day 3, and they let us off of the bus, and our room looked out on this right here. And I asked the guide, I was like, can we walk outside? He was like, oh yeah, you could walk outside. This is a really safe place. And I just went out. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's the night I posted something on my Facebook. I posted a picture of my feet on the rocks of the beach of the Sea of Galilee. And I wrote something like, where are you, Pastor Ed? Oh, just walking along the Sea of Galilee, and then all in uppercase, where Jesus walked, with great big exclamation points. I can't tell you how peaceful that night and every night that we would go back there was. Man. And so, yeah, every night we got to go back. This is one of the rocks. I just picked it up to take a picture. It's basalt. It's from, it's volcanic, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's like, I'm guessing about half of the rocks that I was showing you, from there, about half of them are this stuff from the volcano, and that's what Jesus, that's almost assuredly what his job was, a stonemason, because it's everywhere. There's not a lot of wood. Not a lot of trees for making, and every building there was made of this stuff, at least in the first century. Later on, more expensive homes were made with limestone, but in Jesus' day, that's what they built with. That's basalt, and I wouldn't want you to take it for granted. Okay. We had a bonfire at the Sea of Galilee. Let me see, a couple questions have come in. Those other guys were missing out. Yes, they were. Sorry. Excuse me. And then Ed fell and injured himself during the slideshow. Okay, it's back. Such a contrast from the crowd scenes you showed in Jerusalem. Yes. And airline agent Yishwa said, yeah, they did ask what was in my bags. And I said, I got a bunch of rocks in there. I spread them throughout all of our bags. And Jonathan was like, I don't want them to see me bringing back rocks. But anyway, we had this bonfire, and it was absolutely gorgeous. That's Tiberias, straight across the Sea of Galilee from us. And so it's about 7 miles. Sea of Galilee is about 7 miles across. And if you could see it, right there is Mount Arbel, where we're going to go the next day. And then here is like the village of Arbel. But that's Tiberias, probably the largest city in the northern part of Israel, probably. Oh, it's a video. The Sea of Galilee at night. making s'mores. I'm not a s'mores guy, so I didn't make any. But also, they were using treated wood. I think I have. If I don't have the picture of it, you can't see. But it's like those are like green flames. Okay, I was like, I don't think I'm roasting marshmallows above the treated wood. No, thank you. That's from the professional photographer's bunch of pictures. He was a much better photographer and had a much better camera than I did. So every night we would get these sheets saying where we're going tomorrow. Let's see. The next day it says we are going to Erbel, Nazareth, lunch in Nazareth, Bet Shan, and then dinner. And we were going to be in Galilee one more day, so this wasn't the saddest day. We were going to be in Galilee one more day. The saddest day was when we loaded up and left Ein Gev for the last time and knew we were headed to Jerusalem. And it just reminded me, there's a place, it's in Matthew, and it's just after the Mount of Transfiguration that I kind of showed you at the beginning of this video. And Jesus and his friends, he goes up there sort of it's like a graduation ceremony for his apostles, and it's one last moment for him to hang out with his Father, and Elijah comes down, and Moses comes down, and it says right after that, it says after this, Jesus resolutely set his face towards Jerusalem. And what it means is, he knew at that point, I am making my way towards Jerusalem for the last time. And when we left Galilee and headed towards Jerusalem, I got on the bus and I said, and the tour group set their faces resolutely towards Jerusalem, and nobody thought that was funny. Which is probably most of my jokes, you know what I mean? Me and Jonathan, we have the same philosophy, which I guess it makes sense, right? He probably got it from me. You throw out as many jokes as you can, and every once in a while, one's going to be funny. That one was not funny to them. I enjoyed it. Judy said most of my jokes are just for me anyways. Every morning I would get up, and the best time for me to talk to Judy was early morning for us. And so it would be like 7 in the morning here or there in Israel. It'd be like, 9 o'clock at night or something like that here. And so I would get up and get ready to go, and then I would go out and I'd walk up and down the Sea of Galilee and through the gardens there at Ein Gev. And on this morning, I ran across something I had been looking for the entire time I was in Galilee, and it's the only time I saw one. It is a bee eater. And the bee eaters are these beautiful birds in Israel that have these long beaks. And gosh, my pictures are just not very good. But you can kind of see them there. And there's all kinds of different colored ones, okay? So this guy's like teal and blue and dark black, and they eat bees. And the way that the ancient people used to figure out where the honey was, if they would watch for the bee eaters, and then they would follow them to wherever they were going, because they knew that they were going to be heading towards a hive. So that morning was one of my favorite mornings, because I got to see the bee eater, and that's the Sea of Galilee early in the morning. All right, so on this day we left Ein Gev, and we went around the bottom of the Sea of Galilee and up to Mount Erbel. Took us, do I have on there how long it took us? I don't think I do. Oh, well. Maybe it does say. Nope, it doesn't say. I think it took us like 45 minutes, something like that. And we went through Tiberias, which was kind of interesting because I always wanted to go to Tiberias, but our guide didn't like Tiberias. And yet Tiberias, this is the place, if you've ever heard of the Mishnah or the Talmud, there were two different places that the Mishnah and the Talmud were put together, and this is one of them. The other one is in Babylon, interestingly enough. But so from like 250 AD until I don't know how many hundreds of years it took them to compile the whole thing. And basically it's the commentary on the Law of Moses. And not just the commentary on the Law of Moses, but also the oral law written down. And so that's where most of it happens, is right there. I was like, the Rabbi whatever's, house is there that you could go to and see where the Talmud and the Mishnah were put together. But we just drove right on through and went to Mount Arbel. Now, what is Mount Arbel, you ask? Oh, yeah. So I told you every morning I would get up and go and talk to Judy. So that meant I didn't have time to go eat. So when it was almost time to get on the bus, I would run into the cafeteria, and I would grab, they had these egg patties, no cheese, because you couldn't have dairy and meat in the same place. But I don't know why that then, because is that, I don't know. But anyway, there was no cheese. And so I would grab a couple of egg patties. I'd slap them between a couple of pieces of toast. I would also grab my breakfast cake. And I would head out and we would get on the bus. All right. So here we go to Ein Gev, or Arbel. That's it up there. And it is an ancient fortress. It was beautiful just driving up there. There's the parking lot. Has these ossuaries I showed you about bone boxes last week, I think in the Easter, the resurrection slideshow. But we start heading up to the top of Mount Arbel. We're making our way up. And we're heading towards this top area up here. And just to give you an idea how high we got, did I get a closer picture of that? I did not. That says, danger, cliff fall, or something like that. Stay back, because, it was just a precipitous drop right over there on the other side. The Israelis have a lot more faith in humankind than Americans do. There's no way there wouldn't be some massive fence right there to keep us from doing something stupid. But yeah, there, if you wanted to remove yourself from the gene pool, they had no problem with that. Way, way up there, an ancient olive tree. I think it said it was like 800 years old, which boggles my mind. No, this one was 1,200 years old. That's why they got the fence around it. Don't touch the 1,200-year-old olive tree. And this is the top of Mount Arbel. It is like, so we're standing there. If this guy right here is looking this direction, he's looking at the place we came from, the place that we stay. We got up there and sat down, and Michael did some teaching, and he sang a song, and then they gave us a few minutes to just kind of be there with our thoughts. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, I'll probably get to that tonight. That's from the photographer. Sea of Galilee down here beneath us. The village, I think that's the village of Arbel, but this is Mount Arbel. Mount Arbel was, like I said, it's a fortress, and it is a sheer drop-off on the other side of this here. During the Jewish war for independence against the Greeks in like 160 BC, and in the Jewish revolt against Rome of AD 66, Jewish zealots would come up here, and they would let themselves down over the side, and I can't believe I didn't show you a picture of the front of it. But you'll get to see a picture of the front of it. It is dotted with caves. And so they would drop themselves down and hide in the caves. And the Romans would try to come get them, but there was no way to get them out of there. And they would just stay there until the Romans left. And then they would come pouring out, and they would do their attacks, and they would run back to the caves. Michael sat down and sang us a song. I think I have it for you here. Oh, that's just him. Really good picture of him playing, but there you go.
unwilling to be bound, and a better freedom is not known by those whose hearts will not be owned, and those who follow find a better freedom.
Very windy.
We never can be truly free until we're bound to this community. And the incarnation lets us see
Jets.
the path to better freedom. A slave to sin, my life before,
You can see Michael looking at it.
bolted like a prison door, but in slavery to a prison. I found better freedom. Better freedom can be found by those unwilling to be bound. Better freedom is not known by those whose hearts will not be owned. Those who follow find better freedom. Come with me and find a better freedom.
Sorry about that.
Follow him, find a better freedom.
So yeah, I showed you that because, okay, how come you're not gonna, okay, there we go. I showed you that because right after that, they gave us this time to be quiet and to kind of think. This is my, what do you call that, the panorama picture from the top of Mount Airbel. This is me contemplating deeply what I had heard. But they said, okay, here's what we want. We want everybody to just kind of now sit here and just kind of, be quiet. Listen for God speaking, and just think. And so I sat there and I, prayed and said, okay, Lord, what do you want to say to me? What do you want to show me? And then my brain started wandering off in weird directions. I was like, oh, look, there's an interesting rock, and you can't really tell, but right there is this rock right here. And I don't know if you can tell, it's a heart. And I thought that was really cool. And so I reached down, picked it up. Wish I could give you a better image of that. Anyway, it's a heart. Trust me. And I looked at that thing, and I picked it up, and I kind of dusted it off. And then I thought, oh, I'm supposed to be thinking about whatever it is that God might want to say to me, right? And as I looked at it, and I thought about it, it reminded me of a line from Michael's song. I only started filming that song when he got to the end of the first verse and started up with the first chorus. But the first verse is absolutely amazing to me. It starts out saying, now it's gone. Christ revealed himself to me. He enslaved my heart and set me free. I bound myself to him at Calvary and found a better freedom. And so that concept of better freedom just was bouncing around in my brain. And the idea, there goes my heart rock, the idea that when I find freedom, I find it by letting him enslave my heart. And as I sat there and these thoughts were just kind of bouncing around in my brain, I looked down again at my feet and I saw this thing. It's like the old kind of brown and dried out sticks. Those are from a thistle that grows there in the region of Galilee, and even, well, all throughout Israel. And you can't tell right now, but there's some grass growing amongst it. Our guide told us that when the spring comes around and the thistle grows again, it'll choke out all of that green stuff. He told us that on the first day. He hadn't talked about that day. I just looked down and saw the thistle, and I saw the grass. And then I started to kind of look around, and I saw that all around us was rocky soil, thin soil, and fertile soil. And, these are kind of onions. I guess you can't really tell, but those are these onions that grow everywhere there. But they only get like this if they're in fertile soil. So my brain started to think about Matthew 13 and the parable of the farmer and the seeds. There's a rock with stuff growing in it. All right, so Matthew 13, verses 1 through 3. Later that same day, Jesus left the house, sat beside the lake. Where, do you ask, did he do that? Right about there. It blew me away that I'm sitting there and I could look and see where it was that he sat when he was teaching this. So he sat beside the lake. A large crowd soon gathered around him, so he got into a boat. Then he sat there and taught as the people stood on the shore. He told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across the field, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow. But the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among the thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand it. So I sat up there and I was like, okay, I've got ears, I want to hear. And I got out my phone, which has a Bible on it, and I thumbed my way over to Matthew chapter 13. And it just blew me away, because sitting where I was, I could see all four kinds of soil right there, right around me. And I've always kind of struggled with this parable. And I'm not going to say that I've got it locked up now, but I'm thinking through some stuff, I guess is what I would say. So bear with me as I think through some stuff. But there's the footpath, right? Some seed fell on the footpath, and there it is. And you could see how if it fell on the footpath, then it would be easy for, it wouldn't do anything. It would just lay there. Birds come and eat it, right? Some seed fell on rocky soil. And so you've got these rocks all over there, and then there will just be a little patch of soil in there, and so stuff will sprout up. But I guarantee you, like this was January, late January, early February. By April, that's going to be dead, okay? It's going to be gone. Some seed fell among the thorns, and there's the stuff that was there at my feet that I was looking at that kind of started this whole train of thought going. And as I kind of looked around, I was like, whoa, it's all right here. And then some seed fell on fertile ground. And so it's like, it's like there is these onions over here, onions. It's like, and these beautiful places where there's grass. So Jesus explains this parable. He says, listen to the explanation about the parable of the farmer planting the seeds. The seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. And I've always wondered, I'm always like, okay, so what does this look like? What does this mean? And I don't know that I still understand it completely, but I feel like I'm getting warmer, maybe. Especially in regards to that song that I played you just a second ago by Michael Card, the Better Freedom, right? That the title just kind of makes you stop and ask, what does that mean? A better freedom. What does that mean? Well, I think what what Michael Card is getting at is that we think we're free before we bind our hearts to Jesus. And we think that it's the people that have bound their hearts to Jesus that are slaves, which is, in a way, true. We are slaves for Christ, right? When we become his follower, we become bound to him. The chorus of A Better Freedom says, a better freedom cannot be found by those whose hearts will not be bound. And a better freedom won't be known by those whose hearts will not be owned. So follow him and find a better freedom. And I think that oftentimes what happens is people look at this and they're like, this doesn't make any sense at all. I don't understand that. Why would I bother? Why would I bother, binding my heart to Jesus? My life is going just fine right now. And so, the seed doesn't really do anything for them at all. The seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. But since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing in God's word. Now, I've been talking a lot about this here just recently. I think that one of the biggest problems that non-Christians have with understanding Christianity is that we as Christians often have treated Jesus like he was a product to be sold. And we have often oversold what he promises. And we'll give people the impression that if you give your life to Jesus, then no harm will befall you, that you won't have any problems. I remember early on in this whole corona thing, I would see people saying, I pray and bind the coronavirus against anyone in my family, in my community, in my city, in my country. And I remember thinking, he doesn't promise that. He doesn't promise that we will never have problems. He doesn't promise that we will avoid all harm. All evidence to the contrary. Look at every single story of every single human that has ever followed Jesus in the Bible or elsewhere. And what is the one great unifying theme? Trouble today, trouble tomorrow, trouble next week, right? Now, it's also interspersed with great beauty. And that's one thing that he does promise. You'll never have to go through it alone. He will redeem even the trouble and the pain that we go through. And in the midst of it, we will find such beauty and such strength that we never would have imagined. But I think what happens here with these people is they have this idea that Christianity is this pill that if they just take it, they won't have any more problems. And then all of a sudden they have problems. And it's like what's going to happen to this little plant here, sprouting up out of the rock as soon as the sun hits it and the heat comes. The seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word, but all too quickly, the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth. So no fruit is produced. So it grows, right? But no fruit is ever produced. Why? Well, because the message is crowded out. What is the message? The message is, follow me. Take up your cross, follow me, and in your sacrifice, you will find reward. In your slavery, you will find freedom. In your, it's completely upside down. But when we don't understand the message, and when it's not being presented to us the way that Jesus presented it, yeah, of course it's going to wither. It's not going to produce any fruit. But the seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, even 100 times as much as had been planted. Okay, so I stopped there. So I love that he gives a range, right? 30, 60, 100 times. Why do I love that? Because I don't know about you, I've seen people that seem to be these 100 times producers. I've never felt like one. I think I'm more up here in this range, right? Maybe somewhere in between there. I hope I'm somewhere in between there. But if you look at other people and try to gauge how you're doing based on how they're doing, remember, this is not a contest. You do what I think Jesus would say, you do you, bro, right? You be who you are. When you get to heaven, Jesus isn't going to say, why weren't you more like Moses? Or why weren't you more like Mary? Or why weren't you more like David? Or why weren't you more like the other Mary? Or why weren't you more like Paul? Or why weren't you more like the other Mary? We could do that a few more times. Or Martha, or Ruth, or Esther. He's not going to do that. He's going to say, why weren't you more like you? And if you're like me, you're going to say, well, because I wanted to be one of those guys that's doing 100 times. He's like, no. You just do you. You just be you. And that's where I think we'll stop. But that's sort of, it's still bouncing around in my head. And as soon as I kind of firm it up and understand it better, I think there will be a cultivate lesson coming on the farmer and the seeds with probably some pictures from Mount Arbel. So yeah, I think we'll stop right there. Let's pray. Father, we are so grateful for your Son and for the fact that he doesn't ask us to be anybody other than who we are. And he won't require anything of us that we are not capable of, as long as we do our best to bind our hearts to him, to find freedom, a greater freedom, a better freedom in him. Thank you, Lord, for everything that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, well, we will see you online next weekend, although if you've been listening to the governor and mayor, it sounds like we are starting to head towards a day when we might be able to meet together again. Who knows? Depending on how big they're allowing gatherings to be, we might be able to start meeting together with the Wednesday night crowd, such as it is, earlier than we are on the weekends. But I will see you virtually this weekend, and I will be back again next week on Wednesday night. And we will do, right after this is Nazareth, and then Bet Shaun. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great week. Yeah, that's the right one.